What do you call a bill that extends a president's time in power, removes election management from an independent body, and changes how a president is elected altogether? In Zimbabwe, right now, they are calling it development. And they want you to believe the people agree. The defenders of Cape 3 came out this week with a message built on three powerful words: development, continuity, stability. Political analyst Derek Goto said Zimbabweans understand that CAB3 is more of a developmental instrument than a political document. He said development needs continuity, needs investment, needs political stability, and that is why, he argues, the bill proposes longer political cycles. Longer political cycles. That is the official language for what critics are calling extended presidential terms. Currently, Zimbabwe's electoral cycle runs on 5 years. If CAB 3 passes, it becomes 7 years. 7 years before Zimbabweans get to vote again for their president, their members of parliament, their councillors. 7 years. And the argument being made with a straight face is that this is good for roads, good for dams, good for infrastructure, that investors need stability, that development projects need time, that a longer cycle gives the government room to finish what it started. Political scientist Dr. Tongai Dana went further. He pointed to the public participation process as proof that CAB3 is democratic in nature. Over 300,000 submissions received, written, electronic, public hearings oversubscribed in Harare and Bulawayo. Rural communities, youth, women, diaspora, all participating. And on paper, those numbers sound impressive. 300,000 inputs, the largest public response to any constitutional amendment in Zimbabwe's history. Venues too full to contain the crowds. But here is the question those numbers do not answer. How many of those 300,000 people were supporting the bill, and how many were opposing it? Because participation is not the same as endorsement. A full room is not always a room full of supporters. Oversubscribed public hearings can mean people came to say yes. They can equally mean people came to say absolutely not. The analysts celebrating the numbers have not told us the breakdown. And that gap, that deliberate, convenient gap in the information tells its own story. Now look past the roads and the dams and the development language and read what CAB 3 actually does beyond extending electoral cycles. It introduces a parliamentary process for electing the president. Currently, Zimbabweans vote directly for their president. One citizen, one vote, direct choice. CAB3 proposes moving that power from the people to parliament. Think about what that means. Instead of millions of Zimbabweans choosing their leader directly, a room full of parliamentarians would do it. Parliamentarians who belong to parties, who have loyalties, who can be pressured, persuaded, or rewarded. And then there is this. CAB 3 also proposes transferring management of the voters' roll from the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission to the Registrar General's office. The Registrar General, a government-appointed office, directly under executive control. So in one bill, Zimbabwe is proposing to extend the president's time in power, remove direct presidential elections from the people, and hand control of the voters' roll to a government office. And they are calling this development. Thabo Mbeki spoke in riddles. Now you understand why. Across Southern Africa, constitutional lawyers and democracy watchdogs are reading these provisions with growing alarm. Because each element of CAB 3, taken individually, can be explained away. Longer cycles for stability, parliamentary election for efficiency, voters' role transfer for administrative purposes, but taken together, they form a pattern that Africa has seen before. In countries that did not end well, in governments that started with infrastructure and ended with impunity, in leaders who began with development language and finished with lifetime tenure. The analysts defending CAB 3 are not necessarily lying about the roads and the dams. Zimbabwe has real infrastructure projects, real development needs, real economic aspirations, but a constitution is not a development plan. A constitution is a boundary. It is the line that says this far and no further. It is the document that protects citizens not just from foreign threats, but from their own government when power becomes intoxicating. When you rewrite that boundary in the name of development, you are not building roads. You are removing the guardrails. And once those guardrails are gone, no amount of dam construction brings them back. Parliament is processing over 300,000 public submissions. The analysts say the bill will pass. The government says the people have spoken. But somewhere in those 300,000 voices are Zimbabweans who came to those oversubscribed venues not to celebrate this bill, but to fight it. And right now, their voices are being counted in the same pile as everyone else. Without distinction, without transparency, without separation. So here is the question Zimbabwe and all of Southern Africa must answer before this bill crosses the finish line. When a government extends its own term, removes direct elections from the people, and takes control of the voters' roll, and then points to road construction as the justification, at what point does development stop being a reason and start being an excuse? And when that moment comes, will there still be a constitution strong enough to stop it? Share this, talk about it. Because what happens to Zimbabwe's constitution does not stay in Zimbabwe. It sends a message to every government on this continent that is watching and taking notes.